Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we've got the Bulls news, potentially that we've been hoping for a number of years. We've got a little bit of Bears news, and we've got a special thing that we wanted to bring to you to hopefully brighten your COVID-19 quarantine day. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Well, of course, just like everything else, the season is in hiatus. So, you probably won't be seeing games for a while, but that should not stop you from heading on over to icehogs.com, getting yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, we are back in, our quarantine wonderland. Alex, I'm sure you heard about the meeting that Trump had with the heads of the major sports leagues this week.
Yeah, I heard about it. I saw some tweets about it. Basically the way I could sum up my thoughts on it is the hopes that any sports are going to return in terms of NBA or NHL or like baseball. It looks so bleak to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, when the governor of California says that he's not optimistic that the NFL season will start on time, that means that we are probably not getting baseball.
Right. I just don't know how much longer they can keep leagues like the NBA and the NHL in limbo. I was saying this yesterday on Twitter. It would really suck not to have a champion, but you can't wait in limbo much longer, I feel like. It's just, what do you do? Just not have a champion? I mean, that's so unfair to like teams like the Milwaukee Bucks that had a really good shot at winning their first title in decades. Or, the NHL was so open. There were so many contenders right there. The St. Louis Blues, who had not won in over 50 years until last year, were looking on a quest to repeat. So, they can come back next year, sure. But, we're talking about this season right now. And, year after year, things are different. I don't know how you can salvage anything. I mean, I don't know if they could do this. I don't know if it's practical or like if it's even allowed. So this is probably a simple man's way of thinking. But I'd at least be like, okay, if I was one of the leagues, I'd say, all right, if you weren't making the playoffs, when the season ended, you were not in a playoff position, your season is for sure over. Not sure about the other playoffs, if there was holding out hope that you'd at least have playoffs, but I'm at the point truly where for us, it doesn't really matter. The Bulls and the Blackhawks weren't going anywhere. So I'm just kind of eager to get our offseason started, because the offseason would have started either yesterday or today. It would have been this weekend was like the last day of the NHL regular season, at least for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what the Blackhawks schedule was, yesterday was their last game of the season.
Yeah, yesterday, that's right. It's New York, I believe. They were going to be
the
New
Rangers,
York.
And so
right.
Their season was over. You're right. They should flat out say any team that was not in playoffs going into the end of the season or going into the the quarantine league shut down, that your season is officially over. I mean, that seems very simple, but you're right. It's tough because I really don't see a way that they can have any sort of playoff for either sport. I mean, I really don't.
You got to forget the off season. There's no way that's happening at this point. The regular season.
The regular season's done.
Right, that's what I meant. Right.
That's over. But like, how do you have a postseason? I mean, what's the logistic way? You know, how do you do that?
Right. I mean, you'd have to have something almost pretty brief, I would feel like, if anything. Would you be tempted to say, all right, top 4 teams, like a Final Four, we'll have...
the thing is realistically, can you even have that? I mean, we're
not.
We're talking.
Probably not.
Yeah, we're talking that if, if this really is, as bad as they're hyping it up to be, that there's a possibility that next season might get delayed.
Yeah. I mean, they're saying that the latest I've heard is that this could be almost a seasonal thing, and that there's so much uncertainty.
We don't know. I mean, just because we're quarantining now and there's places that are, quote, flattening the curve, like there's, we're still, it's still out there. It takes one person to have it to just start reinfecting people.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a point now where how many people are dying a day in this country?
Right. I mean, the numbers get bigger every day, and it almost feels like they're saying, oh, the peak is going to be this day, and it feels like it kind of keeps getting pushed back. Like, no, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. So we haven't even reached the point of it's going to get worse before it gets better, because they're saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. So we haven't reached that point yet. Yeah,
I was looking at a math, like a model projection, and it said for Illinois that they are expecting the peak badness to be like April 20th or 21st. So
yeah,
we're still several weeks away from being the worst.
Right.
And Iowa is supposed to be, I think Iowa and Michigan Wisconsin are supposed to be in like the early May is when they're supposed to be the worst. So, we're looking like, if it takes as long to go up or down as it did up, yeah, we're probably looking at mid-June before, most of these cases go away.
Yeah, it's so uncertain. I mean, and you see the different situations in different states. Like you said, it only takes one person to infect a lot of people, so the situation in a given area could change at the snap of a finger.
Yeah, so this is insane. I mean, until there's a vaccine, we're all in limbo. I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, if they were to say the NFL season would start on time, and that's a big if. Would you feel confident going to a game sitting that close to that many people?
No.
I don't know if I would either.
No. Do you think that they'd exercise the possibility of playing the National Football League in empty stadiums?
Wow.
That's the NFL right there.
I mean, I would way rather watch the NFL with no fans than not watch the NFL.
Right. As I would with any sport.
True. But man, this is so crazy.
Did you hear the latest idea about baseball playing in front of empty spring training facilities?
I mean, they won't happen because they're not going to get teams together. How do you keep, the players are in a dugout together. There's more than 10 people.
Right. And the problem is, since every state is kind of doing their own quarantine rules, maybe Arizona and Florida, if they do play like in their normal Cactus League / Grapefruit League ballparks, if there's more outbreak and then a rule changes, well, then you're going to have to shut down again.
Yeah. It just seems like a Band-Aid to a really bad cut,
They said that they're not even going to consider starting until they get the official all clear. So
yeah, I mean, the thing is, we'll probably, if they get the all clear in July, I'm sure Wrigleyville will still be packed.
Oh God, yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
This is how bad this is, and the lakefront was packed until Mayor Lightfoot came and put the kibosh on that.
Well, what's going to be funny is they're going to have an overhead view of the streets of Wrigleyville. It's going to be all jam-packed. And then there's going to be a little clearing, and there's just going to be Lori Lightfoot standing motionless in the middle. And then the view is going to zoom back out, and then everyone's going to be gone.
And it's just going to have a talking bubble above her that says, "Get in your damn house."
Yep, exactly.
The Lori Lightfoot memes have been great.
Oh, they're fantastic. Fantastic. I love the one where they took Saturday at the Park from the Art Institute, photoshopped her in it, and then the next thing you know, it was just an empty park.
Yeah, there was another one that said, it's like, "This is all over. You're free to go outside." And it said, "April Fools, get in your damn house."
Oh, man. That's one positive out of this whole thing.
So Bulls. The rumor now, I think it's Woj is reporting it, so it's probably fact. But it looks like John Paxson will no longer be the president of basketball operations of the Bulls, and that the Bulls will be moving on with a new head of their basketball operations. But don't worry, John Paxson will be on as an advisory position.
I saw that notification pop up on my phone, and there was a brief moment where I truly felt like the clouds had parted and the sun had shined through. And I think that there is a legitimate chance that we're going to see changes for the better going forward. Now, obviously, the right guy has to be hired, and the report has to be true that they are going to give this new guy full control. When I see Paxson as an advisor, I just probably see him. He's going to be just a guy that hangs around the stadium and is just kind of there to have a title, kind of like what Kenny Williams has become. You know what I mean? So that's my hope.
If you were interviewing for the position, I know for me, if I came in and they, because they're seeking out people. It's not like people are requesting or applying for it. They're seeking people out. If they seeked me out and brought me in, and I said, my first question would be, if John Paxson gets in my way, do I have the power to dismiss him?
Right.
And if the answer, if they hem and they haw, or they're non-committal, or they flat out say no, then I'm out. I'm absolutely out.
Of course. Yeah, I'd be the same way too.
It would be, that would be absolutely deal breaker, and it would be my first question.
Yeah. No, that should be the first question, because that's one that I think people are concerned about.
Yeah,
Jerry's never going to fire his friends, so.
yeah, you have to be able to clean that house because honestly, as long as John Paxson is in there, he's going to bring his bad juju in there.
Right. Now, if he's just a guy that kind of sits in one of the big luxury box areas at the United Center and is just kind of there, but doesn't actually have anything to do in the background scenes of the operation, well, that's different.
I don't know. I still don't want him around. It's one thing if, he was beloved by fans and, parade him around the fans. The fans hate his guts. So,
yeah,
let him watch at home on TV.
Yeah, no,
he's made enough money. He can buy a big TV.
He's living in a garage with a 1989 Zenith TV.
It's like King of the Hill. He's got his friends in the alley. I'll tell you what. Bobby, Gar, I'll tell you what.
I said, damn it, Bobby, every time Portis missed a shot.
And then Gar comes over and I'll tell you what. Oh man. Yeah, that's you got to be able to clean all the ghosts out and John Paxson has no business being in there. And Gar Forman would have to go too. If you can't come in there and bring, clear out the old advisors and clear out the coaching staff and clear out the scouts, Gar Forman, John Paxson should be launched out of there with a catapult. And, otherwise I'm just like, nope. If
I'd argue they should use a trebuchet, but that's just me.
Yeah, so it's if I'm coming in to be the new president of basketball operations, I'm like, I want my advisors, I want my GM, I want my scouts, and I want who the hell I want out. And that includes Gar Forman and John Paxson and Randy Brown.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, if I wish I could just take over the mind of whoever's making the hire, whether it's Jerry or Michael, one of the two, with a Jedi mind trick and just, be able to say to the person that I want to hire, you get full control, you bring on your whole crew, all your coaches, your staff, your scouting, everything. That is completely your call, your hire, your moves. There should be zero input from either ownership or Garpax if they're still lingering around. They should have 0.00 and infinity zero input on what happens.
Yeah, if they want to keep Gar Forman and John Paxson on the payroll because they're their boys, I don't care. They just don't want them around the building. They have no access. They don't, if they want to come to a game, they have to buy a ticket and sit in a seat like everybody else. They don't get special privileges. They get nothing. They don't get to come on the floor. They don't get to talk to the players. Nothing. Nada.
You know what they should do is they should build like the special new tunnel that goes to the like it's a big wooden like tunnel like that sticks out of the United Center. Special wooden tunnel for the executives, but it's really just a fool for Garpax, and that tunnel like weaves and dives around the streets of the local areas, and they end up in like some shitty sports bar.
This is the interview process. It's got Michael Reinsdorf. Like, I want Gar Forman, I want John Paxson, I want Randy Brown, and then the new guy going, you get nothing and like it.
Man, I'm trying to be optimistic here about this whole thing, but there's definitely the fear in the back of my mind that it's just going to end up being rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, bringing in a new mind, but they still have to adhere to the Jerry Reinsdorf ways or the, hey, you should listen to our good friend Garpax, our good friends Garpax. I pretty much put them into one entity at this point, as most people do. They're advisors and they're my boys, and they've been such good assets to this franchise for a long time. I mean, look, if there is a guy that comes in He is given full control over what happens. And he has a vision, a plan, and a way of thinking and analyzing that makes modern sense, then I'll automatically be invested. Even if that meant saying, I want to start completely over and do everything my way. Like, restart the rebuild again, but we're going to do it my way, this new way. Here's our plan. Here's my vision. If that's the case, I'll still automatically be more invested. If there is a actual plan and vision that makes sense, not a Garpax plan, an actual plan that makes sense. If that means restarting a rebuild and being like a 20-game winner the first year, but there's actual promise with a plan, I'll be more invested. I will.
Well, we already have one casualty. Is the Pacers general manager, Chad Buchanan, declined the opportunity to interview for the Bulls position.
Yeah.
But apparently the rumors are Bobby Webster from the Raptors, Miami's Adam Simon, and Denver's Arturas Karnisovas are the most prominent names for the position. So apparently the Reinsdorfs are going to seek permission to interview those guys. My worry is that teams are just going to say no. You can't interview these guys, or those guys aren't going to want the job, and then you're like, crap, who are we going to get? And I think you sort of need to get somebody with some level of cachet, because otherwise, if it's somebody that's maybe young and needs to be groomed into the role, that's going to keep the heat on the Reinsdorf, going, no, we need to keep John Paxson on as an advisor. That's my concern. Or,
oh God,
or they say, I think they need somebody that has enough clout as a GM to say, no, I think the Reinsdorf need to learn, because, the Chad Buchanan turned them down, but he turned them down in a very polite way, saying that he was going to keep with his current job and the Pacers organization has treated him and his family very well. That's a polite way of saying, go F yourself. I don't want your job. And You've got to be careful, because if you've got 3 names in mind and they all turn you down for the same reason, like you can't already be floating that, well, we want to keep the old guy as an advisor. That's already tainting the position.
I know, and I'm still afraid. The part of me is still afraid that Jerry's just that delusional. That's one of the problems. He's got to realize, like you said, that there's a reason for all this. I mean, they're in this position for a reason. You got a no from a very respected and a very underrated general manager / executive. I don't know what his exact title with the Pacers is, but he's gotten a lot of positive feedback, I feel like, over the past few years, what he's able to do with a market like Indiana. So that's got to be a wake-up call. And boy, I mean, just the thought of bringing in someone young, away from just the bullsness of it, just looking at it rawly, it's very risky to bring in someone young with little experience, because you could find a gold mine. You could also find a dry hole. You're not really sure. But the fact that it would potentially be with the Chicago Bulls, where your owner would think, hey, we need our previous executives to kind of groom them into the position. Well, then they're getting their mind molded by the very scheme that you're trying to rid yourself of. Like, I mean, it's like, okay, you're going to give Emperor Palpatine another apprentice? I mean, you don't want that.
Yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You can't let that guy interfere with what you've got or what you're trying to achieve.
Good. Let the picks that suck flow through you.
But let's talk a little Bears. Not a ton here. Very, very little. But we knew that the Bears had signed Jermaine Afidi from the Seattle Seahawks to be that guard position that they have an opening for Kyle Long retiring. And listening to Seahawks fans and kind of reading his stats and everything, he's not a very good player, but he's 25 years old. He was a former first round pick, and I wasn't, I said it depended on how the numbers look, but now we're seeing the contract, and man, it's pretty cheap. He got $137,000 signing bonus and a $910,000 base salary on a 1-year deal. That's like backup.
It ain't breaking the bank.
That is not breaking the bank. Absolutely. He's 25 years old and he started 60 games in the NFL. He's a former first round pick. Even though he's had his troubles, a lot of his troubles were on the outside at tackle. You kind of kick him into the inside at guard. Maybe that shores up a little bit of it. But if you make him a backup guard, backup tackle, that's, that his salary affords you to do that. And plus, honestly, like I said, is Ryan Pace's history here has been to shore up any positions that are just gaping holes of need, shore it up with a cheap veteran, and then it allows you to draft best player available. You're not drafting out of need. They needed a guard. They brought in a guard. So now you have Alex Bars and Jermaine Afidi kind of competing for that spot if they don't upgrade. But if they do upgrade, great. Then those guys are battling for a backup spot. But if they don't, they're like, okay, well, we actually got a body that can do the job to fill the job. And that's kind of been, the way that Ryan Pace has worked. And, for all of his faults, like that's kind of been the best thing he's done is making sure that you fill the holes with some sort of veteran. And then that allows you to actually be in the position to draft best player available.
Yeah, no, you said it best right there. I don't think it's a move that people should be overly big or low on. It's just, like you said, it's backup money, and you need some bodies to put in there. And if you actually create competition and motivate these guys to do a little better, then you might actually see more production out of them down the road.
Right. And, if he doesn't play well, you can jettison him for that $1 million. It's no big deal.
I mean, that's like coupons right there.
But if he plays well, if he plays up to his potential, then, even if you do draft somebody, that gives you one hell of a backup player, somebody that's playing for a contract and, playing up to their potential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the other bit of news is, when the Bears traded for Nick Foles, I think the biggest concern was, man, we got saddled with a giant contract here.
Mm-hmm.
So then we found out that the Jaguars picked up all of the signing bonus. So the Bears just are paying his salary. But then now we're finding out that not only that, but the Bears then restructured his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sort of now we're seeing that his base salary for this year is, instead of being almost 16 million, is going to be like $8 million. So he's got incentives that can that make it more, but his base contract is only like $8 million. So if he's a backup and doesn't play, it's still a lot of money, but he's only making like $8 million, which frees up a lot more salary cap space for the Bears that we didn't think they had.
Exactly. And like we've said on previous shows, freeing up every little bit does matter. And the way that contract was restructured, I think has put, I still don't think a lot of Bears fans are overly excited about it, but I also do think it puts a little bit of the minds at ease, because I think there's no secret that, there's just a big concern about the holes that need to be filled, what's left to spend, and the little draft capital we do have. Obviously, that fourth round pick is still going, but I do think that the way that this contract was restructured, I think it was restructured very, very well, as best as you can do it. I think it's put some minds at ease.
Yeah, and so the contract, the reworked contract, ends up being $24 million over 3 years. $21 million of that contract is fully guaranteed. And he gets $6 million in incentives per year, in available incentives. And for every $1 he earns in incentives, it escalates the next year's salary. But he also has a void in the contract after this year, so he can void it himself. So if he ends up being the backup this year, and let's say he wins backup job, or Trubisky wins the starting job and comes out and is the guy we thought he was. Nick Foles is the backup, never plays. Trubisky starts all 16 games. Nick Foles then goes, you know what? I want to be a starter somewhere, opts out of the contract. The Bears walk away with paying him $8 million. That's it. That's it. If he ends up doing great and he wins the starting job and he looks good, then you're getting a starting quarter, and he makes all the incentives. You have a starting quarterback that's making $14 million a year, which is cheap as far as starting quarterback money goes. And if that's the case, then you don't pay Mitch Trubisky, and you move on from him, and then you get a young quarterback, so you get rid of that money, and so you still are only paying $14 million, and it gives you more financial flexibility.
Yeah, restructuring these contracts the way you do, it's not just to free up salary cap. It's basically to make every scenario that could happen as easy as possible on you. And you look at the way that it's been restructured for Nick Foles, the scenarios we just went through, that's one of the many reasons why those were restructured. So I really think that with this open competition now, you're going to see two guys put forth the best they can. So I'm not saying it's a competition of two Hall of Famers by any means, or even overly good quarterbacks, but I think we're creating a competition for something that might be useful for the Bears down the road. Hopefully. I'm being a little optimistic here, but I think forcing the two to compete against each other, may help them bring out the best of them. And that I say that hopefully optimistically, but not with certainty.
Right. And so, that's the hope, is whenever you have a competition, that people rise to the challenge. And
this is an open competition.
Yeah. So the word on the street is that Mitch Trubisky will get the first crack at starter.
Which makes sense,
because he's the incumbent. But I honestly feel like they're behind closed doors. Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are saying to Mitch Trubisky, you know what? Put up or shut up.
Yep.
If you want to be here and you want to get paid and you want a contract, then you better be great. Not good, not okay, not good this game, or great this game, then bad 3 games, and then great. Consistently great. Then adios. We've got another guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And Nick Foles is not, a world beater, but he's a veteran that's played in the system.
Mm-hmm. And he's won a Super Bowl.
And a Super Bowl MVP,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
beating Tom Brady.
Yep.
So, I mean, the hope is that the defense just plays so good that they just need a guy to get them enough points to not screw
Right.
it up. And
Not be Bills fan puke.
yes, and somebody's got to be that guy. And honestly, I keep saying it is, I'm not picking sides here because I don't care. I just want the Bears to be good, really good. But I think they're in the best shape possible if Mitch Trubisky is good. Because I think Nick Foles has a ceiling as a starting quarterback. I think he's a very capable backup, and I think he's able to play at a decent level in this league, but I think he has a ceiling. And I think you only get so far with him. You see with a great defense and good play calling, you can win a Super Bowl with him. But I think as far as being consistently good year in and year out, if Mitch Trubisky is the guy that we thought we were drafting, that's our best play.
Right. That's what you want. I mean, what the best case scenario for the Bears is Mitch Trubisky ends up being worthwhile. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be the case, but I guess you never know for sure until you see it. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're having this open competition because at the end of the day, you got to do what is best for the team. And what's best for the team is playing the best possible quarterback that's available on your team. Whether it's Trubisky, whether it's Nick Foles.
And honestly, when was it 2 weeks ago? Or was it last week or the week before? Where I did my mock draft for the Bears. When I was doing the draft, I honestly had a difficult time. There was, points in the draft where there were quarterbacks in play. I was looking at my best available options based on what other teams drafted, and right in that mix were quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And, it's tough because what if when they come up on their very first pick in the second round and the guy they have the highest grade on is a quarterback? Do you draft a quarterback and then just make this a really interesting combination because, three guys competing for that starting job? Is that what you do? Knowing full well that you don't have a lot of draft picks and drafting a safety or a tight end in that spot instead probably is much better for you in the short term. I don't know, man. That makes and breaks GMs right there.
Right. Absolutely.
Because that's where I don't know. I mean, I can talk big all day long about what I would do and what I wouldn't do, but those are the types of tough situations, and when you're already in a precarious situation like Ryan Pace is with the Bears, you've got to hit, and drafting a quarterback in the second round, if he turns out to be great, and you're like, okay, well then, man, I did a really smart thing. But if you pass him up for a safety, and that other quarterback turns out to be great, that's a big knock on you. Even if that your safety is very good, a good quarterback is better than a good safety in this league right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's tough, and it's one thing in the first round because you're like, okay, well, these top quarterbacks in the first round usually project better. You feel more confident. But when you start drafting quarterbacks after the first round, then, what percentage of good quarterbacks don't come out of the first round? Everybody will just go to Tom Brady, but honestly,
Not a lot. Not a lot.
You know, you look, Dak Prescott was a mid-round. Russell Wilson was a mid-round, but Roethlisberger was a first round. Lamar Jackson was a first round. You've
Pat Mahomes,
was a
Deshaun
first
Watson,
round.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, most of the starting quarterbacks in the league are first round picks. Kirk Cousins was not, but is he an elite quarterback?
Nah, I don't think so.
It's most of the good starting quarterbacks in this league are
Tom Brady is like 1 in a trillion. So
yeah, Tom Brady is a once in a lifetime thing.
right.
That is like, to say, well, that what could have been. That's literally the story of a guy who has $1 left to his name, and instead of buying food with it, buys a lottery ticket and then wins.
Yeah,
like that is that
pretty
story.
much. Pretty much.
Every other time in existence, you go, no, use that last dollar to buy food, or else you'll die. So
yeah.
So it is so rare. You can't bank on that. So, drafting a quarterback outside of the first round is, most of the time you're drafting to be a backup. And,
yeah.
So I don't know what to say, so if you're the Bears, that's a tough one. If you truly are sticking to your board and you're like, the quarterback is the highest rated guy we have, then I guess you draft him. But man, it's real tough when you don't have a first round pick and your first pick is in the second round, and to not pick an impact player that's going to help you day one, like a tight end, a wide receiver, a safety, an edge rusher, a defensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman. That's a tough pill to swallow, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it is.
That's really all with the Bears right now. It's slow moving, That's the draft is just a couple weeks away, and which God knows what's going to happen with the draft.
Yeah. All on tablets. I feel like that's one thing you could easily do remotely via electron. I feel like you could do that.
Yeah, but I think we've all gotten so used to the commissioner giving a big hug to the players.
Yeah, well, I don't really want to see the commissioner anyway, so.
That's true. Everyone can boo him virtually.
Yeah, exactly. Just send him tweets.
Yeah, like, I'm Roger Goodell. Welcome to the NFL draft. And then just, silence. I've become really used to the Jets fans just booing everything.
Yeah.
It's like, the Jets are on the clock. Boo. Why are the Jets fans booing? Because they already hate the pick.
Yeah.
Jets fans are basically Eagle fans on draft day. Like, they're just
yeah.
angry and miserable. And the Giant, you'll always have Giants fans there with their hard hats, the New York Giants hard hats, and they're all excited and cheering until their team drafts, and then they all look at each other confused, like, who is that? Who is that guy? I don't know. Man, the Lions fans will always cheer no matter who their team picks. It's like, yeah, now we're gonna win the Super Bowl. Until they see the guy, they're like, man, this guy sucks. I'm pouring a brown bag on my head to the game. Oh man, I really am gonna go back and watch like NFL draft reruns because, man, I love the NFL draft. It's great. I'll sit there and watch that all day. I'll be like, they're picking guys I've never heard of. They're like, I guess Mike Mayock, you won't see him on there anymore, but, with a Mike Mayock sitting there and he's like, this guy, I've watched him play coming out of Southeast Missouri State, and he's a height weight kick guy, and he he's a 40 yards and he's tough coming out of the Grand Valley State Conference, and he was their top rusher. And I'm like, I've never heard of this guy in my life. and they're breaking him down. And, I just love that. I'll sit there and watch and talk about guys that'll never make it in this league and showing their one highlight from college. And I'm like, man, I'm watching this.
Yeah, you know what I really miss is when you would be on Twitter during an NFL draft and like you'd see people trying to mock a draft as it goes along, and then you see the ones that are obvious, and then you see the big surprises, and you just see all the reactions from people. That's always fun, I think, is just seeing some of the big surprise picks and people going, what is going on? I'll never forget draft night 2017. I don't want to really think about that, but that was one of those drafts where a lot of people were tweeting. I'll also never forget watching 2013 when Johnny Football was tweeted and the look of just disgust and disappointment on his face that he got drafted by the Browns.
Yeah, I remember when Aaron Rodgers got drafted and he was the last guy in the green room waiting to come out on stage, and it was just uncomfortable, and he's just the only one sitting in there, and they finally took him out because, for his own benefit, and then he finally got drafted by the Packers, and he's just like, man, I don't get to start. I have to sit behind stupid Brett Favre.
Favre.
So you had a little game that you wanted to play.
Yes.
Introduce us here.
Yeah, so last week we did our top 10 worst losses in Chicago sports in our lifetime. We're going to go the opposite and do fun. We're going to do the top best moments in our lifetime in Chicago sports. And it's going to be pretty much the same format as last week. We're going to start with 10, go our way up, and we're going to go by number. So we'll each give our number 10, discuss, 9, discuss, so on and so forth. Easy, right?
Yep.
Okay, so without further ado, let's play our top Chicago moments in our lifetimes. Sean, you kick us off with your number 10.
Yeah, and I'm just going to quickly say is I a little bit of, I don't know if it's an unfair advantage because I'm quite a bit older than you. So during my lifetime, I get a lot more things. So there'll be things on my list that were prior to you being born.
That's good. So, I like the variance of this.
And I also, when I was doing this, I tried not to be like, oh, hey, the 2010 Blackhawks. I tried to pick a moment, and if it was a very important game, it was I picked a moment in that game. I only picked a single game if it was there was something about that game that made it special, like the whole game. So
okay.
I'll explain it a little more when I get there. But my number 10 is Dwayne Wise robbing a home run from Gabe Kapler to preserve Mark Burley's perfect game.
I remember that well. I remember that very well. That area where he caught it was labeled the catch, I believe. It still is.
Yeah, so that was I'm not the biggest White Sox fan. I don't hate them, but that was such perfect games. If you're a real baseball fan, a perfect game is so freaking cool, and it takes so much effort. I mean, it's not just the pitcher and the catcher, but everybody around them. And Gabe Kapler was trying to end that perfect game, as you should. Nobody should give you the last few outs. They are trying to earn or make you earn that perfect game, and he had a home run. It was a home run, and Wise took it away, and to have somebody preserve your perfect game in such an awesome fashion is one of the coolest moments in sports. And the fact that it happened with a Chicago team, I'm throwing it in that list.
No, that's good. I'm glad you threw in a White Sox there, just because, my moments for my personal list, being a Cubs fan, mine's a little different. But I'm glad you threw that in there. I mean, when you think about it, the White Sox made the playoffs in 2008, the last time, and That no-hitter's perfect game, I should say, took place in 2009. I mean, and when you think about it, that Mark Burley perfect game was probably the top 3 White Sox moment in the past, I don't know, 12-ish years. I mean, outside of making the playoffs in 2008 with the blackout game, that was probably one of their most memorable moments. I mean, that was a gem of a game that was pitched. That was a heck of a catch. And, I remember when it happened, and that was his second career no-hitter because he had thrown a no-hitter previously in his first career perfect game. That was a big deal. I mean, I remember what a big deal that game was. And it was a cool moment. I remember when Phil Umber for the White Sox threw a perfect game or a no-hitter, one of the two in Seattle. It was like, wow, Phil Umber. But we still remember Mark Burley's perfect game a lot more just because Mark Burley was such a big part of the White Sox for how many years. I mean, that was their ace going out and throwing a perfect game. I mean, that's going to just really affect your memories even more when it's one of your top guys, basically.
So what's your top 10? Or number 10?
So my number 10 is Derrick Rose winning the MVP in 2011. That season was the funnest I ever had watching Bulls basketball. And disclaimer for the rest of this, I was born in 94. I have no recollection of the Jordan era. The final championship that was won in my lifetime, I was 4 years old. I just turned 4. I don't remember any of it. So while I could put that in my lifetime, I didn't witness it. I don't remember witnessing it. So those types of Bulls moments are not going to be on my list. But really all I've had in terms of good Bulls moments was the Derrick Rose era. And boy, I didn't miss a game that 2011 season. They won 62 games. And the story of the hometown kid winning MVP, the youngest MVP to win in NBA history, is something that people still talk about today and are going to talk about for a long time. Just, it felt like the Bulls were truly reborn again into greatness. It's so sad to see what transpired. But when we had that time where Derrick Rose was MVP, one of the top stars in all of sports, what a magical moment it was. What a great season that was.
I'm sorry. That was a cool moment. That was really cool. But I was actually looking up White Sox no-hitter stats while you were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've been alive, the White Sox have only had 2 no-hitters. And they were both by Mark Burley, and one was a perfect game.
Wait, Phil Umber threw a no-hitter, I thought.
Nope. The one before Mark Burley, and so Burley had the one in 2009 that was perfect game. He had one in 2007, and then the one before that was Wilson Alvarez in 1991.
Oh, Philip Umber, perfect game, April 21st, 2012, against the Seattle Mariners.
Was it for the White Sox?
Yeah. I remember watching that game. What list are you looking at?
I'm at a website called historyguy.com.
Yeah, that's got to be outdated, because I remember that perfect game. I remember watching it. It was a 4-0 win in Seattle. Phil Umber got the final out, I believe, on a check swing that needed a complete throw to first to get that. I remember watching it.
Wikipedia is also listing the only one before Burley was Wilson Alvarez.
Well, this was after Burley. This is 2012.
So maybe it just
look up Phil Umber perfect game.
Oh yeah, so that was, you're right, 2012. And then that was just an outdated website.
Yeah, clearly. He only threw 96 pitches.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, not very many pitches.
No.
So my number 9 is, this is one that won't be on your list, is Game 5 of the NBA Finals versus the Utah Jazz. The Michael Jordan flu game where he scored 38 points was so awesome. I remember sitting there watching it and like, oh man, that series was very tense. I'm like, this, the Bulls just got to pull this one out. And Jordan come out and they're talking about how he's sick and with the flu. And you're like, man, this does not bode well for the Bulls. And he just goes out there and has just an absolutely amazing game, scores almost 40 points in an NBA final game against the Utah Jazz. And I'm like, this is awesome. And so the Michael Jordan flu game, it's in the history of Michael Jordan. That's, one of the upper echelon moments.
I mean, that is one of the all-time great sports stories of the modern era, is that flu game. It really is.
Yeah, I've heard stories that maybe he had a hangover.
Yeah.
But I can't prove any of it. So until it's proven to me otherwise, he had the flu and he played through it and had one of the best NBA Finals performances ever.
Could you imagine if Michael Jordan was just at the free throw line, Bills fan puking all over the floor, and yet he's still draining just everything?
They have to call a timeout so he can get a different jersey. Somebody's got to go. They can't use the little mopper thing that clean up the sweat because they're like, man, they're just gonna wipe puke in there. Instead of you hear the floor going squick 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 squick, and then you hear where it's just the sound of puke being stepped in.
You had to go into detail. I should have never even said that.
You opened that door, and I'm busting through it like the Kool-Aid man.
I did. You have the assistants on the side. They're using like the ends of push brooms to hold the puke covered jersey so they can hand him a new one.
You have Phil Jackson dry heaving.
You have Scottie Pippen spraying air freshener. Ew.
What's your number 9?
So my number 9, if I could read here, my room is dark. Okay, this is very recent, and I can explain why. I put the Bears winning the NFC North in 2018, and I was talking about this on Twitter the other day. We know that game didn't change everything in the long run. They ended up losing in a very Bears fashion way in the playoffs. And then the next year they didn't make the playoffs. But that afternoon when they won the division against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, a team they haven't beaten at home since the 2010 regular season. So 8 years, including an NFC championship game you lost to. For a moment, we had a glimmer of hope that they had exercised multiple demons. They won a big game that they needed to get into the playoffs. They beat the Packers and Aaron Rodgers, and they eliminated the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. It was like everything we've wanted to see for so long finally happened. And we had that glimmer of hope that we had exorcised many demons. It didn't end up happening. It was a brief moment in time where things just went our way. But just the feeling of relief and 1,000-pound weights getting lifted off our shoulders, that was a great feeling. And I'm going to cherish that feeling.
Yeah, that was a cool moment. Got tarnished, but it was a cool moment.
Yeah, I mean, watching Leonard Floyd get to Aaron Rodgers and sack him to basically seal the division, it's like this is a dream come true. We're finally beating the Packers at home, and we're finally going to the playoffs, and we're eliminating them from any hopes of making the playoffs or making a Super Bowl run. Finally.
All right, so my number 8 it's sports adjacent. It's not an actual game. It was when the Super Bowl Shuffle came out.
Oh.
So this, I mean, considering when my age, I was just a kid, and so the games were cool, but all of the hoopla that the 85 season would have been awesome as an adult because it was awesome as a kid, but as a kid you don't appreciate it as much without all the fanfare and the hoopla that went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the 85 Bears were such a historic team and they was so brash and there was so much going on with it, that made it even more special for a kid. So when they dropped the Super Bowl Shuffle, I think it was like week 4 or 5 of the season. I mean, it was early on in the season, and they dropped the Super Bowl Shuffle. I as a kid, I remember every day we would go to school, and on the playground, we would all just sing the Super Bowl Shuffle, and we'd argue about who got to be Jim McMahon, who was the fridge. We had a part, and everybody could recite the song word for word, and we would perform it every day. It was such a big thing. So like the Super Bowl Shuffle is just important in my life. And it's funny because like I'll show it to my wife who had no memory of it and no tie to it, and I'm from Chicago, and she just looks at it like, okay. But for me, like it is so important. I watch it. I still watch it now. I get a smile on my face. I'm like, man, when I hear the like if I hear that, it's like a dinner bell. I come running and I'm like, ooh, who's watching the Super Bowl Shuffle?
Oh my God. You're such a meatball. It's great.
What's your number 8?
Number 8, 2013, Brett Seabrook beats the Detroit Red Wings in Game 7 of the second round. Was that one of the great comebacks in Chicago history or what? Down 3-1 against your oldest rival, a rival who was once basically what the Packers have done to the Bears to you for a good 2 decades, all coming down to a Game 7 where you knew that after that Game 7, you were no longer going to be in the same conference. A very long historic rivalry. While you still play each other 2 times a year, the division rival aspect was coming to an end. And after so many years of torture under the Detroit Red Wings, when they would beat the crap out of you, when you watched them go on Stanley Cup runs, when that rivalry basically ended, you got to go out on top in pursuit of another Stanley Cup for yourself. Boy, what a great feeling. What a great feeling that was.
I guess now in retrospect, funny story. So my in-laws were in town during that series. And they're from Philadelphia. They're Flyers fans. And, but they recognize the importance of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And the Blackhawks had such a good season. So they knew when I'm like, I'm watching these games. They came downstairs in our basement and were watching the games. And they lost every game while they were there. And
wow.
They were like, nah, this team is not that good. And I was just absolutely miserable. And then they go home, and then the Blackhawks make this historic comeback.
Yeah.
I'm like, my in-laws cursed the Blackhawks.
I mean, they came back from 3-1 leads before it was cool when the Cubs did it. I mean, that was a great comeback. I mean, the Blackhawks, they were so good that year, but in that series, it looked like their shell had been cracked, and then they just counter-adjusted. I mean, that was the amazing thing, the way they adjusted, because they were getting frustrated as hell by the Red Wings in that series when it was in games 2 through 4. They looked dead.
They really did. I thought it was overdone, kaput. Stick a fork in them. And so, yeah, that was a cool series. And, you know, in retrospect, at the time, it was, you know, the first half of that series, you were just like shell-shocked. Like, I can't believe this team is so frustrating, and they're frustrated. Just, you know, no bueno.
And that series, I think, officially broke the Red Wings. I mean, they hadn't won a cup since 2008, but they were in the Cup Finals in 2009. They were making the playoffs every year, but 2013 was the last time that the Red Wings got further than the first round. After that, it has just been a landslide downward for that franchise. It wasn't what, like, you know, it's not like they had come off multiple cup runs and then that game happened and then it just ended, but it kind of felt like that was the last year the Detroit Red Wings were, like, I guess, overly relevant on the NHL scale, because the next few years, if they made the playoffs, they were just, like, ousted in 5 or at least in the first round. And then the past few years, they haven't been close to the playoffs. So it almost felt like any last ounce of hope the Red Wings had contending for a while was basically ousted in that overtime in Game 7.
Yeah, it was like a dagger.
Yeah, pretty much.
My number 7. It's the Super Bowl. Devin Hester gets the opening kick after everybody says that, oh, no, they're not going to kick to Devin Hester. Definitely not kicking to Devin Hester. Their whole game plan is we're not kicking to Devin Hester. They kick the opening kick to Devin Hester. And all of the flashing bulbs from the flash from the cameras, the bulbs, like 1902, all the flashes from the cameras just going off, and Devin Hester takes it to the house, and I was just like a kid in a candy shop. I was so excited. I was like, my God, I'm gonna see a Bears Super Bowl as an adult. This is amazing. You know, the rest of the game went downhill quickly, but that moment, the fact that it was the opening moment, if that would have happened, you know, after the second half kick, and they were already losing and it was a frustrating game, wouldn't have been that special unless they won. But the fact that it was the opening kickoff and that was the first glimpse that we got of the Bears in the Super Bowl was pretty awesome.
Just thinking about that game, no matter what, just depresses me. Could you imagine if they won that game? That would be one of the all-time moments in Chicago sports. It would have been like Dexter Fowler's leadoff home run in Game 7.
Yeah, because you know what? Honestly, that Bears team, I don't think was that good. Like if they would have won that Super Bowl, they would have arguably been one of the worst Super Bowl winning teams.
Definitely one of the worst quarterbacks to ever start a Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I don't think it was that good of a team, but a Super Bowl is a Super Bowl, and any way you get it.
Oh yeah.
I'll take it. I mean, the 72 Dolphins still celebrate, and they were not that good of a team.
Right.
They still hoot and holler like it's the only thing that's happened in Miami in the last 50 years.
Well.
All right, what's your 7?
My number 7. I should have turned on the light in here. Okay, funny. Same season, same team. The NFC Championship game. That was a lot of fun. Thomas Jones going crazy. Bernard Berrien making that unreal catch. And then just after a pretty tight game through most of it, I mean, that game was a lot tighter than it should have been. The Bears should have been blowing the Saints out, but it was like a pretty close game going late. And then they just dominate and pull away in that fourth quarter to the point where when there was like 3 minutes left, they knew they were going to the Super Bowl. There was no way they were going to blow it. Just the way they blew it open, and it was just a great feeling. And you saw those white Saints uniforms get absolutely trounced into the mushy dirt of Soldier Field. Oh, that was fun. That by far the best Bears memory of my lifetime.
Yeah, that was a good. I mean, I lived through '85, so that was anything that's ever happened Bears wise since then is just like and this is the most old man thing ever because, back in '85.
Ugh. Old man meatball.
It really is, and it's a tough one, but that's a reality for old Bears fans.
Yeah, well.
All right, my number 5, and so I sort of alluded to it, is I tried not to pick like a whole game unless.
Wait, did you miss one? We're on number 6.
I'm sorry, 6. Sorry, 6.
Yeah.
6 is I tried to not to pick like a whole game unless there was a special thing about the whole game, like the flu game of Michael Jordan. So this one kind of falls under that. And it was Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game.
That's a great one.
I listened to most of it on the radio. I was at work. I worked in a warehouse at the time, and just the whole thing going through. And I was the only 2 people that worked in the warehouse were me and my best friend, and we're in there just like, oh my God, how many people has he struck out? Because it was going through and listening to the radio broadcast. So you're like, okay, struck out. And then after a certain point, you're just like, how many guys has he struck out? It was, you couldn't just look up on the internet on your phone. I didn't even have a cell phone at that point. And so it was just like, you had to wait until they told you how many strikeouts. And then you're like, okay, now I'm starting to take notice. And then it just got very active. Like no work was getting done in that warehouse. And we're just staring at the radio, like, to paying attention, to actively listening to the broadcast. And you're like, my God, this is history here. Like, he's gonna strike out, he's gonna break the strikeout record. He ended up tying with 20, but still, that's absolutely just incredible. 20 strikeouts in a game.
Bill James, the Bill James system of game scoring for efficiency, take this with a grain of salt. It's debatable on how accurate it really is, but if you do go off that metric, it has scored the best pitched game in history.
I mean, it was absolutely amazing, and it wasn't like he was mowing down some podunk team. I mean,
this was the Houston Astros with the Killer Bees.
Yeah, he went through the Killer Bees.
There's multiple Hall of Famers in that lineup. And he made him look like fools, and he wasn't even old enough to drink yet.
Yeah, it was such an amazing performance, and I was like, wow. And to go back and actually watch it later with the the video, not just the audio version, it was like, man, it was reliving a moment in a different way than I'd ever experienced it. So it was like I got double duty out of that.
Yeah, I had just turned 4 years old a few days prior, so I don't remember it exactly. But I've watched the replay of that game so many times. It's one of my all-time favorite games to rewatch. It was such a unique game. It was, you look at all the classic Cub games over the years that happen at Wrigley Field. You see all the crowds going nuts at all those games, and you saw the crowd go nuts there, really nuts at Wrigley Field that game. But the only difference was, that was not a well-attended game. I think there was maybe 15,000, 18,000 people there only. So it felt like a very exclusive group of people got to see it. And the fans that were there made so much noise and made the most of it that Pat Hughes said it feels like a World Series game. You get a crowd making a regular season game in May feel like a World Series game when your stadium wasn't even half full. I just think that's amazing.
I mean, yeah, it was such a cool game, and it was a work day. It was a middle of a work day.
Yeah, it was the middle of the week.
And it was early. It was early in the season. It was like what, first week of May?
May 6th.
May 6th. So it was first week, early in the season. I don't remember what the weather was. I was inside a warehouse, but
It was bad. It was raining.
and you know, it was it was a day game, so it's like, yeah, of course, like you know, not going to be that well attended. The weather not great. Midday,
And later that night there was a
daytime.
Bulls playoff game, and that's what most Chicago sports fans were focused on.
Yeah, so you know, it's a lot of people missed out on it, but you know, I guess one of the cool perks of working in a warehouse, like, you know, I got to listen to the game and then just stop what we were doing, really focused, and you know, sitting there with your friend, just listening like in the olden days to the radio. It was a really cool experience, man. It was really cool.
That is cool. That's a good one. So my number 6 is June of 2010. Patrick Kane is skating down the ice, looking like he's getting stung by a fleet of wasps. Everyone's confused. And then everyone realizes, oh crap, the Blackhawks just won their first Stanley Cup in nearly 50 years. That was the first time I had witnessed and can recall a championship being won in my lifetime. Yeah, I was alive for the 3 of the later Bulls ones, but I don't remember it. You know, obviously the Bears made the Super Bowl, but they lost. I mean, I saw the White Sox win a World Series, so if you're talking about the city of Chicago, I remember watching the Sox win the World Series, but I'm a Cubs fan, so that didn't do that much for me. So I was just dying to feel the joy of a championship, saying I was a long, frustrated fan at the age of like 16. But I finally saw it, and it was great.
Yeah, I have that same one on there. It's number 4 on my list. I call it the Phantom Goal. That was such a cool moment. You know, especially since it was the team it was against, and I had lived through the Blackhawks losing a Stanley Cup playoff series. I mean, Stanley Cup finals.
92.
Yep. And so this was amazing, and just you know, I just remember sitting. I missed the early part of the game because I was working, and I rushed home from work and sat down and started watching it. And then when it happened, I was just like, wait, what? And there was nobody else. It was just me in my apartment. And I'm like, what happened? And I'm like, I see him celebrating, and I'm not ready to celebrate yet, because until it's official, I'm not celebrating. And then it's official. And it was such a delayed celebration. It was, you know, I had all of the celebration built up and ready to emote. And I had to wait a good 30 seconds, and then just, you know, it was so much fun. And it was, you know, it was all these emotions I had of having waited so long for a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. And it was awesome.
Yeah, it was such a fun team, and a great season, and a great playoff run. Oh, it was great memories. Can't believe it was 10 years ago.
But my number 5
Number 5.
is Jordan's last shot as a Chicago Bull.
The one that sealed their 6th championship.
Yep, 17-foot shot to beat the Utah Jazz. And
Chicago with the lead, as Bob Costas called.
yeah, that was such a cool moment. And, you know, like I brought that series up before, because it was 2 amazing moments in there, the flu game and the shot. And, you know, I really thought the Jazz were going to beat the Bulls. I really did. And, you know, it was so tense of a series. And when Jordan pulled that out, it was such a cool moment. That was such, you know, there was so much to the Michael Jordan lore. And that just this giant basket that holds all of the moments that, you know, make up this lore, that just goes boom, you know, thrown into it as one of the highlight moments. And it was such a cool thing to seal off the 6-peat.
Yeah, There was again, I don't remember it live, but I've watched the replay many, many times, and yeah, it's one of the biggest clutch moments in the city's history.
All right, what's your number 5?
So you may be surprised how low this kind of is, but it's one I still treasure very much. It's when the Cubs won the pennant at Wrigley Field in Game 6 of the NLCS in 2016. I was watching that at my local watering hole with some friends. The place went nuts. The realization that we were going to the World Series for the first time in 71 years was fantastic. It felt great because that was honestly one of the most relaxing playoff games I've ever watched, because it wasn't tense. It wasn't nerve-wracking. Kyle Hendricks was in complete control. They scored runs early. I mean, it was over like as soon as it started. That was such a stress-free game where the Dodgers never even mounted any sort of threat. It was just enjoyable.
Yeah, it was a good moment, and it's funny because when you're a sports fan, you sort of want those easy wins, but and even when they feel good, they don't never feel as good as one that was nerve-wracking. And
you never forget the overtimes and the game 7s and all that stuff.
Right. They're not the same. But except for one. But it was, that was a cool moment, but it didn't make my list. It was cool because I was like, oh man, I'm seeing the Cubs make a World Series. But honestly, it wasn't exciting enough of a game, and I was honestly, this is my own thing. I was so sure the Cubs weren't going to win the World Series that I was like, I downplayed it in my own mind because I was like, the Cubs just can't win the World Series. They'll never win it in my lifetime. And, so I just sort of downplayed making it to the World Series.
I didn't know that.
So my number 4 was already, we talked the Kane goal in 2010. So what's your 4?
My 4 is the Blackhawks win 2015. There was something really special to me about that year. I think it was, well, there were several reasons. One, they were looking to avenge that heartbreaking loss the year before, and that win pretty much just shoved the memories of that horrible game almost out the window. I mean, that was good on its own. Second of all, this truly felt like this sealed the kind of satisfaction level, if that makes any sense, for this team. Because it kind of felt like, okay, this core is so good, they need to win more than one. And then they won 2. And then you kept seeing how good they were. And I kind of said to myself, if they could win at least 3, I feel like the full potential of this core would have been realized. Obviously, I want more, but I feel like anything less than 3 would have been kind of disappointing with the talent of this core. So it kind of hit that satisfactory level right there. And then lastly, of all the cup runs that this era of Blackhawks has gone on, this was the one where they kind of felt like the underdogs. I mean, 2010, 2013, they were the favorites to win the cup going into the playoffs. I think a lot of people would agree with that. But in 2015, the first round, a lot of people thought that Predators team was going to beat the Blackhawks. Then the next, the Wild were kind of going on a Cinderella season, then we extinguished them. And then, the Western Conference Finals. They're going to beat the big bad Ducks? No way. They shit on their home ice in Game 7 and win. And then, man, look at the Tampa Bay Lightning. What an electric, pun intended, team. They took care of them in 6 games. And 3 of those 4 series, the Blackhawks did not have home ice advantage. So it kind of felt like an underdog type run for that Blackhawks team. and one that kind of satisfied the window of opportunity for that Blackhawks team. That team really holds a special place in my heart.
That season was really awesome. You know, I remember, you know, that last game against the Ducks. True story is my wife and I were out taking my daughter in her Red Ryder wagon, and we saw in Chicago a mama duck with her baby ducks, and some ding-dongs were trying to pet the duck, and she was running away, and a bunch of the babies fell in the sewer drain and were trapped under there. And so there was a car that was parked on the sewer drain, so we couldn't lift it. So we had to find the person that owned the car, move it, pull the grate open, went down in the sewer, saved the baby ducks. And
really?
The mama duck had already gone. And so we brought the ducks to our house, and we had baby ducks in our house for that game. And I was like, this is the universe's way of saying, you know, we did a solid for you, Ducks. Blackhawks are taking this tonight.
And they didn't just take it. I mean, like I said, they destroyed the Ducks on home ice that game. And, you know, the other thing that made that cup run really awesome, they won the cup at home. That was cool.
True.
That was really cool to hear the horn go off and the place go crazy when they won the cup.
My number 3 is the same team, different season, and it is 2 goals in 17 seconds.
That's my number 2.
You know, so this, you know, Stanley Cup versus Boston, and you know, I was nervous. Boston was a good team, and they were up in that game 3-2, and then Taves to Bickle ties it up with like what, a minute and a half, a minute 20 seconds left.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I just remember, like, I thought it was over. I mean, you're down by a goal with less than 90 seconds left, and I'm like, oh man. And then Taves to Bickle ties it up, and you're like, okay, I'm psychologically preparing myself for overtime.
Yep.
And before I can even get into that prep mode, Dave Boland scores a goal and takes the lead. And then I'm in panic mode. I'm like, Blackhawks got to hold on. Blackhawks got to hold on. And that was such an exciting 17 seconds. It was, you know, absolutely amazing.
And you know what? And it's my number 2, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it now. What was really amazing was that when they had the lead and they had that like minute to kill, Boston was completely shut down. Like, the Blackhawks didn't give them a single good chance or good luck. Like, go ahead and watch that last minute. They didn't have like any shots or anything even come close to being a threat. The Blackhawks completely shut them down. That 2013 season might be one of my favorite seasons ever. Honestly, I should just put number 2 as that whole season, the point streak, the playoffs. I mean, I already mentioned the Detroit series, the double overtime goal from Patrick Kane to send him there. That season was so special. That was my freshman year of college, and one of the ways I bonded with a lot of my friends that I made that year was over that Blackhawks team and watching that Blackhawks team. And, you know, over the spring months, I'd lost 2 relatives in my family, one on my dad's side, one on my mom's side, a great aunt and a cousin. And, you know, it was kind of a sad time, but that Blackhawks team kind of helped me get through it, just watching them play. And I remember I was just so antsy for hockey to be back because it was a lockout shortened season. I spent the whole first semester of college just praying that there was any sort of shot that the NHL would come back. And then they did. And I'm like, all right, you know, I'm not expecting huge things from the Blackhawks, but I'm just glad to have them back. Next thing I know, they're winning the Stanley Cup. What a magical year that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my number 3, since that was my number 2, I'll go into my number 3. Cubs beating the Cardinals in the NLDS. I mean, what else can you say? That's a dream come true right like there. Could you ever, before 2015, would you ever imagine the Chicago Cubs beating the Cardinals in a playoff series? That was like the next closest thing to winning a World Series.
True story. I was on a work trip and I watched that series from a hotel room in St. Louis.
Oh, that is awesome. Did you go running around with a W flag shouting meatball things?
Of course I did.
Did you go like flicking off everyone and just like...
But the problem is everybody in the hotel is not from St. Louis, so they don't care either.
Well, you
like,
could have gone out of the hotel.
Yeah, I was in like the middle of nowhere. But it was, I was a total meatball. I didn't have a W flag, but I was hooting and hollering.
It was my...
I'm sure the hotel staff probably hated my guts.
Well, I'm sure they did, but that's okay. That was worth it. I was a senior in college, and I didn't have cable, and I just walked home from campus, and when I was walking home, I was following most of the game on my phone nervously, and then when I got home, I put the last few innings on the radio, and then when they won, I went outside and ran around Harlem Avenue as people were shooting off fireworks and honking horns. It was that was awesome.
My number 2, and this might surprise you because I didn't want to pick the whole game or the whole season, but my number 2 was just a play, and it was 1985, or I guess 1986, was when the Fridge scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
For me as a kid, like the Fridge was larger than life. I mean, he had a G.I. Joe figure. His name was the Fridge. He may be large, but he's no dumb cookie. Like it was such an awesome thing. And when he scored a touchdown, the game was already over at that point. The touchdown made it 44-3. It was a 44-3. It put it way out of, there was no way the Patriots were coming back. The game was already locked away, but he got to score a touchdown and, wasn't even close. He just barreled through, got the touchdown. And, it was tough to pick a moment because if I was to encapsulate just that whole season as one entity, easily number 1, but I tried to pick apart and break it down, and I was like, and there was a lot of cool things that happened, but, the Super Bowl was so lopsided. I mean, you look at the stats, the Patriots were never in that game. I mean, it was like playing the computer at Madden, and you're just like trouncing them, and the stats were unreal. I think it was like the second quarter before their quarterback completed a pass. Like it was unreal. They just absolutely dominated the Patriots. And
as I think everyone expected.
And so like it was tough to just be like encapsulate one moment from that whole season. So when you broke it down, it ended up being number 2. And that the Fridge just was so important as me as a kid. Getting him the touchdown was awesome. And so, I have put number 2, Fridge scoring a touchdown. And it was, if you go back and listen to the play-by-play, the Super Bowl was so much less important in the whole sports world as it is now. It's like, now it would have been like, you would have been able to listen to it in 17 languages and, it would have been a commercial, and it was like, they were making like bad puns. It was like a, it was like a preseason game call. Like that's what it sounded like, but it was so cool to watch it happen. I remember vividly where I was when it happened as a kid, and the Fridge scoring, and, you just piling on the poor Patriots. And it's time I called them the poor Patriots, but now I'm just rubbing in every chance I get. The stupid Patriots didn't get that Super Bowl, did you know? Where was your god Tom Brady at that time? Ha ha ha. I let everybody in too deep on that one.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
Take your meds, Sean. Take your meds.
Yeah, take your meds and eat them with your corner pieces of Chicago Tavern pizza, so they go down. They go down your gullet easier.
So, did you already have your number 2?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
17 seconds.
Okay, so then I think we all have the same number 1 then.
I think so too. But go ahead.
You know, the way I put it on here is Mike Montgomery pitches to Michael Martinez, soft grounder to Chris Bryant that for some reason Joe Buck said was going to be a tough play. Bryant to Rizzo, Cubs win. Cubs win.
Right there with you. Right there with you. And you know what? I did not enjoy watching that Game 7 at all, but actually winning was the greatest feeling I ever had in my sports fan life. And nothing comes even close.
I mean, you know, I lived through the Super Bowl, and that was an amazing time, and that season as a whole was amazing. But when they won it, the gravity of how important winning a Super Bowl was, or how important that team was in the history of the NFL, or how I still wouldn't have seen another one at my age. Like, none of that factored in. But the historical context of the Cubs winning the World Series was absolutely not lost on me. You know, I wasn't so old that, I guess that I would have put into my brain that it was never going to happen, rightfully. But I was in my 40s, and I think I was 40. I think I was 40, and so the fact that I had never seen the Cubs in a World Series, and it hadn't happened in well over 100 years, and the way it happened, going to Game 7 and a rain delay, and the Cubs having to come back, and
it was a Hollywood movie.
It really was. Like, Disney could not have written anything as dramatic as this. And I don't know why Disney has not made this into a movie yet. But
we'll see it one day. We'll see a movie about the Cubs one day.
Yeah,
like a movie.
Absolutely.
Not a documentary, a movie.
Yeah. And it was, when it happened, like, it was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just like happiness and relief and the weight of history and the historical importance, and all these things just kind of collided at one moment. And I didn't cheer and I didn't scream. I just stood there and cried. And my daughter, I wanted her to stay up to see it, because I was like, she was not quite 2. I was like, this is something that, Cubs fans lived their entire lives and died full lives, lived their full entire life. Not like, oh, they died when they were 20 in a boating accident. Like, they lived an entire lifetime, never saw the Cubs win a World Series.
80 plus years old, they lived and never saw it.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that lived 100 years and never saw it. And I'm like, you're 2. I want you to see this. But it was so late, put her to bed, and she heard my wife and my dad cheering. She came downstairs because she heard us, and she's like, Dad, why are you crying? Why are you sad? And I'm like, I'm so happy. And I went out onto Harlem Avenue, and the people are shooting off fireworks and honking the horn.
Oh, the fireworks.
Waving the flag, and it was crazy. And I couldn't go to sleep. I was just up was so wired. I was like, I can't go to sleep. This is everything right now.
I didn't go to bed that night. I stayed up through the entire night. About 5:30, I actually went out and got on my bike and just rode around. And I kept, no joke, you might laugh at this, you probably will, and you should laugh at this, but I kept pinching myself because I was scared at one point that night that this was all just a dream. And it wasn't. It was reality. Go ahead, laugh at me. But I mean, there are times, well, it sounds kind of sad, but there are times where I wish I could just go back and relive that night again, because I mean, I was on cloud 9 that night.
It was unreal. I just, it early in the game, I was like, Cubs have this. Cubs got this. Yep. And then at a certain point, I was just like, it's over. And I was so mad at my dad. And literally, I'm sitting here recording this episode in the same exact spot as I was watching that game. And but my dad was sitting there, and he just kept saying, early on, he's like, this is over. I'm going to go to bed. This is over. Cubs won. I'm going to bed. And mind you, he was like, he was, like 80, and he had lived his 80 years, never seen the Cubs, and he was going to go to bed.
Jeez.
Like, he's a diehard Cubs fan. He's just like, this is over. I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, and we were sitting there watching in his room. I'm like, I'm going to sit there and watch it. And I'm like, shut up. Stop saying it's over. This is over. It's over. They got this. It's over. I'm like, shut up. Don't say that. And I'm like, shut up. Stop saying that. I'll murder you. And when the Indians came roaring back, I was so mad. I'm like, this is your fault. This is all your fault.
I said some really things that I'll never repeat again after the Indians tied the game. Well, here's how I basically reacted. I was so nervous by like the 6th inning. I'm like, you know what? I need to go out for a walk. So I brought an old Walkman I had and put Pat Hughes. I couldn't take it anymore. So I was walking around.
Was it your Bartman Walkman?
It was probably a similar model. Yeah, it was that old. But I was walking around to the 6th and 7th inning. John Lester had settled in and he was cruising. And then, I come back to the house. When I'm walking back to the house, it's the 8th inning. They already have an out. I'm walking towards the house, 2 outs. I'm like, all right, I need to see the final 4 outs. Then I get back in the house. Then Rajai Davis ties the game. And I broke down in tears because I thought it was over. And then tears turned into anger, me shouting, me pounding my fist into the wall and slamming things in the 9th inning when the Cubs had Hayward at 3rd with less than 2 outs and they couldn't get him home. And then after that inning, I turned the TV off for the bottom of the 9th and just followed it on Twitter. And I saw people freaking out for a brief moment and exhaling, and that was in reference to the foul ball that off Kipnis's bat that looked a lot worse than it was. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. At the moment it looked like a 500-foot home run.
Yeah. Yeah. And the funny thing is, it wasn't even close. It was the most harmless foul ball you'd ever see, just from that angle, though.
But the angle and the amazing amount of stress that I was carrying on my shoulders.
You weren't thinking clearly at the time. Nobody was.
That was a home run, and I was doomed for another 100 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I after that night, I thought it was over. I didn't want to see it, but I wanted to follow it. And then they got through, and then all of a sudden, I see the officials tweeting, the tarp is coming off. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? A rain delay? What if we're delayed for like hours and we have to resume the game tomorrow? Like, could you imagine thinking the game could have already been over? We could have won, and then that happened? Good God. And then the rain delay itself. That was the part of the night that was such a blur to me. those 17 minutes, complete blur. I don't remember what I was looking at, what I was thinking. I just remember when the 10th started up, I turned the TV on, but I had it on mute because just the thought of hearing the announcers in the crowd just was really stressing me. And you know what the other kicker is? You know, you said your dad wanted to go to bed. My parents fully gave up. They went to bed. They went to bed. And this is my dad, who's a huge Cubs fan. He gave up. He went to bed. Then they took the lead. And then I was so nervous for the bottom of the 10th. I went outside and listened to the first 2 outs on the radio. I was pacing around. I couldn't take it. And my parents heard me go outside, and my mom heard it and then woke up my dad. He's like, Joe, Alex is outside. Like, there's still something going on. This game is not over. So they wake up, they see it in their room. I come inside when 2 outs are recorded so I could see the final out. Indians score a run. I'm like, oh, fuck. And then they finally won. And then everything was great. But, I was so miserable during that game. I was the whole time. It was miserable.
It was absolutely miserable.
It was agony watching that game.
I mean,
it wasn't fun at all.
Up until like the halfway point of the 5th inning, it was awesome. But
oh yeah, when they were up 5-1,
yeah, that was awesome. And then after that, it was like the bottom of the 5th all the way through till the last out was absolutely misery. And that last out was just the sweetest thing ever. And Joe Buck, and I know a lot of people are like, oh, I love the Joe Buck. Like, when he was just like, this is going to be a tough play. I was like, it's a routine grounder. Chris Bryant has this. And I'm like, why is he saying that? Why is he saying that? And it's amazing watching the replay of how quick it happens and how slow it happened in my reality. That in my mind went so fast was, why is he saying that this is going to be a tough play? What if Chris Bryant, what if like he doesn't have a good grip? Like, what if the ball is wet and he doesn't have a good grip and he doesn't have a good throw and there's a throwing error? What if he can't get a clean pickup? What if? And the throw wasn't a great throw. And
yeah, he slipped.
Yeah, it was not a great throw. And I'm like, oh my God, this is going to sail into the bleachers. Oh my God, I'm making myself sick. All in that like 3-second span. It was like an eternity.
I was so on pins and needles that I thought it was an infield hit off the bat. I actually did think it was going to be an infield hit. I'm like, oh, no. And then Brian got to it really quickly. And I honestly, when it happened live, I didn't see the slip because it all happened so fast. And then when I saw the replay, I'm like, oh, my God, he slipped when he threw that.
Yeah, it was. And once it was over, just hours and hours and months and years and decades and centuries of stress and just all went away. It was like the most pure moment of joy. And
yeah,
it was pretty incredible.
I'm watching the replay the final hour right now. Watching it right now. Yeah. There's a curveball. It's slowly towards Bryant. He gets there. He throws. I mean, he slipped kind of as the ball was leaving his hand. So it's not like he was slipping when he picked up the ball. He picked up the ball pretty cleanly. And then once he let go of it, he flung his arm. That's when he began to slip. And, you know, the throw, if you look at where it lands in Rizzo's glove, he reached about cap brim level to catch it. Maybe a little higher, maybe cap level. But, you know, and the thing is, too, if you watch where the ball goes into the glove, just like the moment it goes into the glove, Michael Martinez is a good, 7 feet from the bag still. Like, it wasn't even close. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the field was a lot faster than you would have expected. A lot of times those balls just kind of die, but I think the field was a little fast, and I think he hit it harder than, we probably realized. And Bryant got to it quick, and he was playing pretty shallow.
Yeah, he was. I think he was about even with the bag. I mean, when they show him hitting the ball and then they cut it to Bryant and he's coming in, he's a step in front of the bag. So you figure that's a good few milliseconds after the initial hit. So if he was already moving in, but it was right after it was hit, he was about even with the bag. It wasn't like he was playing deep. So he was well positioned for that ball.
Yeah, I'm watching it again now.
I could break down that final play in so many ways. And, I was watching that 10th inning on mute just because I was so nervous about everything. So imagine a quiet room, me hanging on for dear life, and then just seeing it, not hearing it, just seeing it. Seeing Rizzo put his hands up the second he caught that ball.
So I have a freeze frame on it right now. And Michael Martinez, when the ball is in Anthony Rizzo's glove, is not even past the grassy part of the infield. And Anthony Rizzo has got his arm over his head. It's the bottom and the mid is probably the top of his hat height. So it's a little bit over his head, but watching it in slow motion here, not as terrible of a throw as it was in my brain at the time, but really not that close. I mean, he could have really stopped, done a Sean Dunston double pat in the glove and then thrown it and still got him out by a good step and a half.
Oh yeah, I mean, he didn't double pump at all. He threw it immediately when he got the ball. And yeah, looking at it again, I'd say the glove was about the tip of the cap level, like the top there. It's kind of hard to tell from the initial angle, but if you look at from other angles, but it's not like he had to stretch up all the way up with his arm way above his head to get that ball.
Yeah, I think it was because he throws his hands. He doesn't bring his hands down. He just goes them straight up afterwards. Right. That it, it made it look worse than it was.
But. Yeah, no, that's very true. Because again, like you said, because it happened so fast, and then he immediately puts the ball in his pocket. I love that.
Oh, I know, and that was smart. And the reaction shot of the dugout of the Indians, man, just sitting there. I can't imagine what it would have been like had the Cubs lost that game.
Oh, I know. And yeah. Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
I do not envy the Indian fans, and you'll never see me gloat to an Indian fan about that. Like the Bears winning the Super Bowl over the Patriots, I will gloat like crazy.
People will just pour meatball sauce all over you.
But I will never gloat to an Indian fan about that, because that's just got to be a tough dagger, just stab right into you. That's, man.
Have you ever seen, there is an angle of the final out from MLB Network on YouTube from center field. Have you ever seen that video?
I have not.
Okay, go on YouTube right now.
I'm on YouTube.
Called Cubs Celebrate Their 2016 World Series Win. It's from MLB Network. And it's got the check mark next to it. It's got 46K views. You find anything?
I'm finding oh, here we go.
So go and watch that, and watch it with the sound on real quick.
Okay, I'm going to watch it with the sound on. Wait, I got to see this from the beginning here. Wait, I gotta see this again. Yeah, so Rizzo, it looked like he was anticipating it to sail high because he gave it.
Yes.
And it didn't go. So, man.
You know why? You know what? You know else why that's such a great angle? Is because you got a real sense of just how many Cub fans were in the stadium that night. Look at the crowd reaction from that.
I still laugh because there was that one Indians fan that, it's by himself and he's on his phone the whole time, and they kept showing him, and then I saw a meme afterwards, and it was like him on the phone, and it just says like somebody wrote, "Hi, credit card company. Yeah, somebody fraudulently bought World Series tickets on my credit card." Oh man, can you imagine just paying however ungodly amount of money that you had to pay to be at that game, and then be on your phone the whole time, and then your team lose?
Pretty brutal. That's surrounded by the opposing fans in your own home ballpark.
You know what though? That's your own fault, man. If you let another team's fans come to your stadium in that important of a game and take over like that, that's your fault.
Yeah. I truly believe there were more Cub fans than Indian fans in that place that night.
I mean, I get it. If you were like, but if you're already a season ticket holder, you're probably not that hard up for money that you're going to sell those tickets. You're probably diehard enough. So who is selling those tickets, man? Who's selling those?
A lot of people who probably bought tickets before, and they were saying in one of the Cubs documentaries that the prices for tickets for that game during Game 6, when the Cubs, when they went up like 7-0, they said the prices shot up so unbelievably high, and like 80 to 90% of ticket purchases the night before Game 7 were all from Illinois.
Cubs fans travel hard, man. They're troopers.
And I mean, throughout that whole series, the Cubs had a good presence in Cleveland through games 1, 2, and 6. But Game 7, I think they truly outnumbered the Indians fans that night. The other funny thing about that video I just sent you, when it zooms in on the celebration, there's that green screen that's right behind the home plate for ads.
Yeah.
Right above it, there's an at-bat sign. Right above that, just to the right of it, you see Theo Epstein holding his kid and his wife.
Oh, yeah, because then they come up with a close-up of it, too, of them.
Yep.
Yeah, it was an amazing moment.
Yes, it was. And you know what? If the Cubs do win again in our lifetime, it'll feel extraordinary, but that was the one that we'd waited for so long.
My question is going to be, so I've seen 6 Bulls championships.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen 3 Blackhawks championships. I've seen a Cubs and a Sox World Series.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a Bears Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've seen droughts. What's the next one going to feel like? I mean, I'm sure it's going to feel good, but like the next time the Bears win a Super Bowl, how is that going to feel to me compared to having lived through 85? Is it going to be because it's so long, so much time has passed that I'm just, I'm not going to be able to care because I'm just so excited? Or is it going to not live up to the what I remember and built up in my head with the 85 team?
Well, I mean, for me, it's going to feel a lot different because I've never seen a Super Bowl. But I think I think we're getting to the point where that last Super Bowl win in 85 was so long ago, and we've dealt with so much crap. I feel like it's going to be a huge weight lifted off, even for people who did see the last one.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I mean, I really hope, and I want to see this so bad. And I want to see it be a really good team Like when they went to the Super Bowl against the Colts, I would have been excited for the Super Bowl win, and I would have been very happy, but it wouldn't have felt as good had they not. If because they were not that good of a team.
Mm-hmm.
They were good enough to win a Super Bowl, but you're like, okay, then I think they were a lot of lucky moments, and they had a bad quarterback, and I think a lot of things just went right. When you look at it a lot different than when the Mahomes won it this year, because you're like, that team was really damn good. They went out and beat a really good team, and they were just like an unstoppable force. You sort of want that. You want your team to just be unstoppable rather than, everybody else being like, well, they won. They just kind of sucked, though. And it just kind of takes the joy out of it a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'd still rather have a cheapy Super Bowl than no Super Bowl, but you want it to be a historic event where it's just like, this team is one of the all-time greats. That's what you want. They're so good that everybody's scared to play them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You want a team that in legacy, in like a legacy mode in Madden, that's people want to play that team. Not like, not that team.
I just want a Super Bowl. I just want a Super Bowl really bad. I don't care if
being picky. I
don't care if they go 9-7 and squeak in. I just want a Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a reasonable response. I'm just being greedy, Gus.
God. Seriously, like, you are uber meatball tonight, my friend.
That's what I'm literally sitting here in sweatpants. I think this is the first time I've ever recorded a show in sweatpants.
Bathing yourself in sauce.
That's how meatball I am. I'm just like, the only thing I could do is I'm going to order myself some Zuba pants. I've never owned a pair of Zuba pants, but I feel like I should be wearing Zuba pants.
Yeah, you should be.
With with a Zuba's hat. The matching hat.
Do it for the next show.
Yeah, and true story is, was it last year or the year before? I went on eBay and I bought one of those old school starter Bears jackets.
Oh my God!
Where it was a pullover jacket and had the kangaroo pouch in the chest.
Oh my
God! I just woke up one day and I was like, I need that coat. I never had that coat. I needed that coat. And
somebody needs to tackle you.
I spent $35 on it, and I was like, worth it. So now I'm a proud owner of a Bears starter jacket.
Well, congratulations. That does sound pretty cool, though.
No, now I need a Zuba hat and a Zuba pants to wear with it. And I'm officially the meatballiest meatball ever. I could hang out with the bear guy.
Oh God.
Me and that guy,
would be something.
Me and that guy just, trading meatball stories.
God, you could have a ball doing that. Jeez.
I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Oh, we have one more thing. One more thing. Sorry. I feel like we should mention this. If you want to edit out that little interruption, go ahead.
No.
I feel like before we sign off, we should give a little quick tribute to the late Ed Farmer.
Ed Farmer. I totally had forgotten about that because it was early. Yeah, that was, rest in peace, Ed Farmer. It's sad to see him go. He was so important to the history of the White Sox, and that he's never going to get to see what this iteration of the team is going to become, and that sucks. That's like Harry not seeing the World Series. That's the level of suckitude of this.
Yeah, almost 30 years of doing White Sox radio. I mean, he was such a big part of the White Sox community, a big part of the fans, and really a big part of just baseball fandom in general. And he was so well liked, so well respected. He did his job with professionalism. He was very lucky to have both a very successful baseball career, both on the field and behind the mic. And, he got the privilege of calling the '05 World Series. He yelled "light it up" when Paul Konerko hit the grand slam in game 2, I believe, of '05. And then he called, obviously, the final out when they won the World Series. So, that's probably the highlight of his career. Calling a World Series is the highlight for any broadcaster in baseball's career. He's had a lot of memorable moments over the years. We mentioned the no-hitters and perfect games, but, calling a World Series, that right there is, something every baseball broadcaster dreams of doing. So it is sad that he doesn't get to see this next incarnation of the White Sox, but, he was very, very privileged and honored to have called that 2005 World Series, and I'm sure it's a moment that he'd never forget. And we'll always remember Ed Farmer. So rest in peace to a very professional guy.
I hope when baseball eventually does come back that the White Sox do something on their uniform to honor him.
I'm sure they will. They'll do something. Maybe, they might have his name on the field. They may have a patch on either their hat or their uniform, but there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to do something.
Yeah, that would be poor form if they didn't.
They most definitely will. He was too important for that franchise not to.
Yeah, agreed. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. We had a lot of fun with this one. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Google, whatever, Spotify. We're on everything. Give us a 5-star rating, leave comments, share the podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Thank you guys again so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.